Hello everybody, welcome to Shared Screens Media Club, where today we are doing the Spoilercast for How I Met Your Father, or what this episode is tentatively called, How I Formed This Opinion. Joining me today from Shared Screens is Jim Tasty, aka Bret Jamerson.
Hello, hello.
And a special guest is Mitch Abramson, aka TheNanoBiologist. How are you doing today, Mitch?
You had it right the first time with Mick.
Mick, yeah, oof. My mouth doesn't know how to work sometimes.
It's Friday. Don't worry about it. But I'm doing good.
Yeah.
You know, just been watching too much How I Met Your Mother stuff on YouTube lately, especially after doing the whole series rewatch.
I've gotten so many suggestions the past few months of just How I Met Your Mother compilations on YouTube.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they're all good.
Yeah.
There is no bad compilation video out there.
Because they're all just the best bits all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So before we get started on the actual, show of How I Met Your Father, I want to know everyone's kind of history and opinions on the original show of How I Met Your Mother. So Mick, if you want to start us off, what's your history with that show?
So I jumped in around right before season 7 aired. I was in between high school and college, and I just needed a show to watch, and I just picked up How I Met Your Mother. I think I watched it all within a week, which is a lot of watching, basically sun up to sundown. But I got hooked to it. I was there every week for the new episodes from 7 through 9. I hated the last episode so much that I refused. Anytime I rewatch the show, I will not watch those last 2 episodes just to pull up the alternate version on YouTube, just to finally get some actual closure on the show and not whatever crap they showed in the first time.
Gotcha. And what about you, Bret?
So I didn't get into How I Met Your Mother until the year after the last season ended. It was on Netflix. All the seasons were all up there, and one of my college buddies, his name's Colin. He had been talking about the show like the whole semester, and I was like, you know what? It's like in college, like you just have like some like times in your life in school where you just like can binge a show, like Mick said, and I binged through the entire series in about a month, something like that. It was a pretty rigorous viewing schedule, but I couldn't get enough of it. And ironically enough, with the ending, I wasn't like too upset about it. It wasn't like, it didn't feel super satisfying, but because I binged it all at once and like I wasn't with that show for 9 years, it didn't hit me the same way. I was like, I was still wanting something more. And then when Mick showed me the alternate ending a few weeks ago, I was like, my mind was blown. I was like, oh my god, this is like way better. This is way better. Where was this all my life? But
another happy customer,
right, dude? Yeah, and I love the show, man. It's one of my defining sitcoms that I always recommend to people.
Gotcha. So, Bret, I'm in a similar camp as you, so the show ended my senior year of high school, and I had heard through reactions that people were mad at the ending, but I had no context for the show. I didn't even fully know what the ending was, other than people were mad at it. And I know I watched the show, I don't know when I started, but I know I finished it like 2016-ish, because I remember it was when I started at the second school I went to. The ending tore my fucking heart out. Not even from the sense that I was mad. It was so much. And then I was like, wow, that was a choice. And over the years, I've started to like, when I found out that they had that decision made from the beginning, I was like, I don't like it, but I could like respect it in a way. Mm-hmm. And it is one of my favorite sitcoms. I think that the way I've always described it to people is like Friends is so much easier to go back to and watch once you know the dynamics. But How I Met Your Mother, because it's all a flashback, it's so much more interesting the way they've played around with like the narration. And I've seen the alternate ending, and my favorite aspect of the alternate ending isn't even just the fact that it ends after he says, "That's how I met your mother." It's the montage that shows the kind of domino effect of everything that happened. And I wish that they just kept that even in the original, because that one doesn't imply any changes.
Yeah.
And I think about the show a lot, and one of my favorite aspects of the show is, let's be honest, the character of Barney and a lot of his lines have not aged well. But when I go back and watch the show, my favorite aspects are like the giant monologues and the lessons that the show kind of gave about love and stuff. And there are certain ones that I just listen to sometimes because they're both motivating and tear jerking at the same time. And when
on that same note, sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
But like on that same note with Barney, he in the show learns what is not acceptable and what changes through time, because when that show first aired, those jokes people might have cared, but like it was a very minority opinion, but they all learned over time those jokes are bad jokes. And Barney, and they all evolve as characters, which kind of goes back to the point of the finale of some of the people on that, some people like Robin and Barney kind of just resetting until they had some weird thing happen to them, like with Barney having a child and him having a daughter made him realize that he needs to respect women when he already learned it beforehand.
Yeah. See, my issue with Barney wasn't so much the fact that his character was a player, because, that's going to happen. People like that exist in real life. There were just some of the more absurd, like, the playbook stuff he did that were, like, some of them went too far, that were to the point that, like, yeah, that, like, side joke has not aged well. But for the most part, it was like, yeah, you're right. He evolved, he learned, and he kind of mellowed as the series went on. And I think that Barney also does have some really great moments when, like, he always jokes about how much he hates marriage, but then he's the only reason that Lily came back from San Francisco. And I liked that reveal a lot. And then going into this show, I found out that the original writers and creators were kind of just producers on this show. So that worried me a bit as to how this show would go. Like, if I'm not getting their writings and the lessons that they were going to put in the same type of monologues, like, how much would I like this show? So we don't necessarily have to go episode by episode, but if we want to just maybe stick with the first few episodes, like, what were your guys' thoughts? Personally, with me, from the first episode, I was hating the dialogue at first. There's a whole thing about how modern writers' rooms are not hiring 20-somethings, and so when they try to write for 20-somethings, it sounds horrible. But that started to improve as every criticism I had in the beginning improved as the season went on. What about you guys? How'd you feel about the first few episodes?
I didn't mind them too much. I think what I was on the edge throughout the whole first episode until they showed the apartment, which really solidified that it is in the same universe with the whole apartment with the swords from before. And it was updated a little bit to get rid of some of the, the burn marks, the holes in the wall they had there that they kind of had to fix when they moved out. But just seeing that it was linked to the universe kind of wanted me to keep watching in hopes that I would get more from these characters that I loved from the original show.
Interesting.
But going to the dialogue, it was rough, and it feels like it's built around Hilary Duff. It's all built around her character instead of before, where they had a great list of B to C list actors with one A list actor being God, I'm awful with names.
Neil Patrick Harris?
Neil Patrick Harris, yeah. Like, he was the biggest actor out of all of them at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
And they didn't build it around one character. It was based on Ted, yes, but each character had their own spotlight. Even in the first season, even the first couple episodes, they all had a time to shine and have you immediately fall in love with them.
Yeah, now that you pointed out that way, I see what you mean, where, like, there is always, especially in these shows, when there's a narrator, clearly that one's the main character. But yeah, the side characters aren't getting the same side plots that, like, Marshall and Lily got, or Robin and Barney got.
In How I Met Your Mother, they weren't side characters. All 5 of them were the main cast. They all were main characters. Right. While here, it feels like it's Hilary Duff featuring everybody else. And they do get some spotlight here and there. Like, it feels like, okay, we need to make an episode about this person or that person, instead of here's the gang going through all these things. While a person does get a highlight, everybody else still has a great adventure during it. And that does change later on in the season when it feels like they finally get their footing with it. But yeah, for the first couple episodes, it feels like it's Lizzie McGuire show that she always wanted, but in the How I Met Your Mother universe.
Yeah, it literally feels like, and I don't think there's any truth to this, but like they were working on that Lizzie McGuire like reboot, reimagining, and then that got canceled, and then like somehow some of the bones and skeleton of that Lizzie McGuire show got transferred over to
No, there is
this.
truth to that. I think that somebody
really?
said that basically when they put Hilary Duff onto the show after the Lizzie McGuire reboot got canceled, that she was going to try to take some of the stuff that she wanted to include in the Lizzie McGuire reboot that Disney wasn't allowing and implement it into this. How much of it, I guess we'll never know because we don't know what the Lizzie McGuire show is going to be. But from what I heard is that they were going to take some influence from that.
Oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, because it definitely feels like Mick said, a Hilary Duff vehicle primarily, as opposed to the ensemble kind of focus of the original show.
Yeah, for sure. As for the apartment aspect, I really liked that. I was like, this is cute. It was a cute way to be like, hey, here's a small connection. But I was really hoping that the show wasn't gonna like hammer us over the head with cameos or references or stuff from How I Met Your Mother, because I feel like if that's all it's going to do, I would have rather it have been a continuation in some form. And I think they did a good job in using stuff from How I Met Your Mother well.
Yeah, they did. Like they brought up the pineapple briefly. They showed the swords, obviously, in the original apartment. They showed.
Well, they brought back the captain.
Yeah, they brought
Which
back.
was a really weird twist.
Well, it's not just the captain. I mean, Laura Bell Bundy returned as well, his wife.
Boats girl.
Yeah, that's the same actress. I only know her because she was she played Elle Woods in the Legally Blonde musical.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
don't ask me why I know that. And like I'm just looking at my notes right here. See, one of the things that threw me off in the first few episodes, showing the narrator that often is an interesting choice.
Right. That is a big distinction.
Yeah. And I feel like I think that actress was offered another gig and she's like, "Oh no, I'm doing this." And it's like, if you just recorded these lines in one week and didn't have to be on a set, you probably could have done both things.
And I think on that same note, where I think that also kind of applies to the diverse cast that they have this time. It's not all a bunch of white people on the show, and like which and also showing the kids immediately kind of shows, okay, he's going to end up with somebody who he's either going to adopt or end up with somebody who is of the same skin color as him. But through How I Met Your Father, there's a bunch of different people introduced already. And so I think just having the child speak it, I think it's adding a little bit more mystery to who she might end up with to be the mother eventually, which is why I think they did go with this change from the original.
That makes sense, because one of the things I actually really liked, and in a way I'm happy they didn't do this in How I Met Your Mother, but I think that doing this in How I Met Your Father is a really interesting way of changing the story, is that at the end of the first episode, she goes, "That was the night I met him." And it shows you everybody she met that night. And then I was like, wait, but Josh Peck's supposed to be in it. And then the reveal that they showed a part that we didn't see in the first episode, but happened. I'm expecting that we're probably going to see more people that she met at that party that night, anytime they want to introduce someone.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I totally agree. It's just like what they did with the mother. And after they finally introduced her, we saw how she was so involved with the whole gang's life. They like, and all those moments where Ted said, "Oh, she was here. She was here. She was at this point. I was in her apartment at this time, dating somebody else. I got her umbrella here." And they showed how she tied into all that. I can easily see how they have a party setting be a way so they can kind of zoom out more and more each season, be like, these people were here also, and do like you said, yeah.
Because it's also very possible that, her meeting the father could have just been a very casual, "Oh, hi, I'm so-and-so," and then she walks away. Whereas, when they kind of focused in on the faces at the end of the first episode, they were people that she had met in a significant fashion, so to speak.
Yeah, I to go back to Mick's point that they don't show like the kids, and the other point that we already talked about with the fact that by just showing the kids, you already kind of have a sense of where the show is going, where they framed the show already. And like you said, Jordan, at the end of episode 1, they can be dynamic with where they take the show, and they don't have to be like pigeonholed. They don't have to have the ending to the show already written. You know what I mean? They can still be flexible with where they're going. And so I think hopefully that would help alleviate some of the pitfalls that How I Met Your Mother fell into, like especially with the ending. And so that I think that's a bonus for How I Met Your Father.
Yeah. And then
And on that,
oh, go ahead.
and I think going back to the writing aspect though is I feel like this season needs a rewatch because what made How I Met Your Mother amazing was all the hints that we got leading up to the finale and meeting Tracy. Like the first season, like one of the first episodes, he meets a stripper named Tracy and he says, "That's How I Met Your Mother," and the mother's name was Tracy.
Yeah, I found that
And
out.
it was a great joke because the kids knew they reacted that way because their mother's name was Tracy.
Mm-hmm.
No, I remember seeing that Easter egg and I was like, oh, that was genius. Yeah, I might have to do a rewatch just to see if there's stuff that I missed the first time. Because I also feel like the first few episodes to me, like they got better, but for the most part, were like, this is rough to get through. And like you said, they found their footing after a few. I don't know where I was going with that.
Can we talk about how Charlie became a bartender just overnight? And
Yeah.
they kind of talked about, but man, rent in New York is like freaking insane. And like some of these apartments are pretty small, but it's like
Trust me,
it's
I
like
know.
with Hillary Duff, like she's a photographer, but she has like this apartment. It's like it's just funny commentary of like how sometimes TV shows aren't like super real, like
Yeah.
super real.
Well, something that I noticed, and these were two interesting choices, was that one of the bigger differences is that in this scenario, a good chunk of the group is not already friends. Like when we do the pilot of How I Met Your Mother, the only new person to that group is Robin. Sure, Barney did not go to college with Ted, Lily, and Marshall, but he at that point had known them for a few years. Whereas in this one, we basically have two sets of friend groups coming together, and then a couple of their love interests / a sister that he isn't really that close with, so still feels like a new person. So I think that was part of the reason why it took so long to find its footing, was that the characters themselves didn't know each other. And I think the jobs that they chose for them, they're all very, in How I Met Your Mother, they all, for the most part, have fairly regular jobs. Barney's job was always a joke, but it could just be described as like generic businessman, architect, teacher, lawyer. And Robin has maybe the more creative one, being a newscaster and wanting to do bigger things with it. But here it's like so many of them are artists or in an industry where you don't just start working and go, where you really have to fight, because we have fashion, we have music, we have photography, and then we have an entrepreneur and a doctor and somebody who doesn't know what he wants to do yet.
We have rich British guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I think what episode did I write it in? There was just a point where I was just like, everybody's dumb, and Ellen and Charlie are my two favorite characters on this show, because everybody else was pissing me off.
Yeah, I agree with that because they're also the people who they are allowed to let loose more. Everybody else is more tied to their jobs. Like Hillary Duff's character is very about her photography. It's been all of her driving factors throughout the season and reasons why she broke up with Josh Peck later on. Sorry, spoilers. And same for
Spoilercast, say whatever you want.
Okay, cool. But yeah, for Charlie and Ellen, they defined right away, we have a crap load of money. They are the Barney characters who are allowed to get away with so much stuff. And I think both of them together kind of create a Barney who is allowed to do wacky things, and you expect them to show up doing wacky things because they have no limitations.
Yeah, that's really part of it. And then there were really interesting aspects to their characters on top of just being like, they come together and become a Barney. I think, the reveal, and now we're jumping into later episodes, but that's fine. Like the reveal that Charlie had jumped from country to country before for a girl, I was like, oh yeah, I could see why if you found out that this was a habit, that would scare you. But then him like kind of doubling it down and being like, no, like this time was different, I thought was it added a lot to his character, where he kind of realized from a while ago that he didn't like the family he was born into, and sure, he became very used to the privilege that he had and the lifestyle, but he just knew it was a very toxic type of life. And then with Ellen, we get not necessarily the opposite, but like she's still making residuals off a farm. She got married very young. They make the joke that they said that it was the only other lesbian in the county or the town. And then she realized that like you can't just be with the first person you've ever been with. And so now she gets to find not just herself outside of this relationship, but find herself in the world that is New York City. And I'm really liking to see where they're going with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like those two definitely have the most possibilities out of them all, besides Hillary Duff, and where she might go with all this, because she's already thrown some curveballs, but it feels like hopefully they learn their lessons from season 2, which has already been renewed for, and hopefully they have more episodes as well, so they can have more time outside of just a 10-episode run to build out everybody more, show that they aren't just for their jobs or just friend of Hillary Duff, and be their own people and create this great gang dynamic that we are all hoping for.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that the second season will be much more consistent, because by then we'll be like, well, they're officially a gang now. This is a group of people that we know, and we know to an extent their dynamics. So it's going to kind of be like starting off the way we start off in the pilot with How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
Do we know off the top of our heads, like, is it another 10 episode order, or do they order more episodes?
I'm looking it up.
That I don't know.
Because because this show's a sitcom, and it's literally structured in that format where the episodes are like 24 minutes, whatever. It's not like the I don't know what you call it, like the limited series, like feature length TV kind of format.
Yeah, they're sticking to the very traditional sitcom 22 to 24 minute.
Yeah, but the episodes were limited to 10, and usually sitcoms are like 22 24.
Season, yeah.
Which obviously sometimes there's like filler, but it does allow just more time to spend with these characters, just more time for story, all that stuff. And most of the time that's a good thing. At least that's from my perspective. I always like when shows like have more content, more to offer. And so when I finished the season, I was like, oh my gosh, like I wish there was like 5 more episodes, or 10 more, like a whole nother season. Because like, you really do start to like, obviously it's not, How I Met Your Mother is like a classic sitcom, but like, you really were starting to buy into all of these characters. I know for me, one of the threads that I was like hanging on at the end, I was like, okay, what is Sid and Hannah going to do? Cause like, if she starts doing her thing in LA, it's like, okay, like you're gonna have to move over there, dude. Like,
so
you
I
can't
have
just live in New York forever.
I have a note, I think from, is it the last episode or the second? It's from the beginning of episode 10, where I said, I love how optimistic Sid is, but I feel like there's a reason Hannah isn't in a lot of the marketing. But I guess this marketing was just for season 1. Maybe season 2 we'll see her in the marketing more, because I don't want to say that the show is predictable, because there were some things that I didn't expect. Like, I really thought that, Valentina and Charlie, sure, we see them meet, we see the very beginning of their relationship, as opposed to Lily and Marshall, who had already been dating for a long time. But I thought maybe they'd be the more consistent couple, and their personalities might make them, get into fun antics. And I feel like they really kept basically going, Sid and Hannah are going to break up. Sid and Hannah are going to break up. And then to reverse that, where, Valentina and Charlie break up, but they're kind of putting on a strong face, and the only person who really knows is Sophie. And then Sid and Hannah decides to just get married at the courthouse. At the end of the day, they're still going to have to do a long-distance marriage. And, just putting a ring on it isn't going to cure those insecurities or the struggle that a long-distance relationship has.
And going back to it, there's a 20-episode order for season 2, so we are getting
interesting
double the length.
Yeah, I actually would really much appreciate that, because, like, Bret, you said a lot of it is filler, but filler might... you could do a lot with other characters in filler episodes.
Well, and with this kind of a case, like, even with a show like this, or any sitcom that has like a huge episode order like this, or I guess standard, but like more than 10, like even if an episode's like, wow, this episode didn't blow me away, or like whatever major plot thread didn't get moved forward, there's still like at least for me, I can always find like moments from each character or one character or whatever. Like I always can find little moments that I can just hold on to. I like it's a little bit of a different case, but like with Seinfeld, like you always like even if it's like an episode that's like wait, what did they do? You can still like find like one, moment from George or Kramer or whatever that you can kind of be like, oh, that's hilarious. Oh, that's like another little wrinkle into who this person is that you can then bring forward to the next episode that kind of actually shakes things up or moves like the story forward. So I'm really excited. I was super happy to hear that because usually with first seasons, the episode order is not normally the full like normal order, and so I'm glad that they actually like have the confidence to do that for the second season.
Yeah, no, I like that they're doubling the episode count for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then when's that? Do they have an idea when that's supposed to air?
No, but they are supposed to be filming again this summer, so they're getting right back to it.
Okay, so.
But I think that's enough time from they just finished this season. They now have a couple months to get in the writer's room and take all those lessons in, or all those criticisms in from the reviews, from fans who've been tweeting at everybody, to take it all in and hopefully make season 2 so much better than season 1. Because I think we can all agree that like season 1 is okay, but also sometimes it feels like the highlights, at least to me, were when it was directly tied to How I Met Your Mother.
See, what's funny is when I started episode 8, I literally wrote, when I started episode 9, I was like, I was, as the show was loading, I was like, I'm really happy that they haven't been beating us over the head with these How I Met Your Mother references or tie-ins, and then suddenly it starts with the captain, and I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. And then, Robin shows up at the very end of episode 9. Again, spoilers, but this is Spoilercast. I don't know what you're doing here. And I was getting nervous, but I saw the way both of those things played out, and I liked it. I was like, okay, that's a very tasteful way to incorporate Robin without them beating us over the head with it. And she's applying the lessons that she learned from the original series to this character that I didn't realize that Sophie probably had some similarities to Robin until the second to last episode, because in a way, Sophie seems so much like Ted with how optimistic she is, and like, what does she make Jesse say? Like, this is the first chapter of my last love story or something like that. But then you see how afraid she is the second a guy says, I love you to her. And that's when I started seeing the connection more to Robin. And so I think they brought Robin in at the perfect time and used her in just the right way. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think they used, in terms of like, there's references here and there. The fact that they actually brought only one cast member from the original show, like from the core cast, I felt was a nice touch in terms of it wasn't overwhelming. It's not like it was like the whole group like hanging out together. Like in that moment, it was just one. So it felt like a nice touch. It wasn't too like aggressive, but still kind of tied the show together with the original, which, like Mick said at the beginning, like not that like that you forgot it was connected to How I Met Your Mother, but like you just weren't sure where it sat with the original show, and then seeing Robin at the end, you're like, okay. Then it started to feel more comfortable in terms of the two shows coexisting with each other.
Yeah, and to keep in mind, go ahead.
I'm saying just before that too, though, they brought up Goliath National.
Yeah,
Barney's company that's where Ellen's going to work now, is it's new subsidiary of Goliath. So who knows? That kind of opens doors of we might see Barney later on if they can get Neil Patrick Harris back. She's taking lots of pictures, so maybe she ties in with an architectural firm too, or just helps with all these other things that it opens the doors, I think, more for more tie-ins in the future. And I think you're right, Jordan, that like it shouldn't have to rely on those. It kind of felt like the first season did for a while for me. That's why I was watching week to week, was hoping to see more from those people. But if they can get season 2 much better, it'd be nice to sprinkle them in every now and then as like a nice reminder, like, oh hey, this is the same universe, but also make it its own thing too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would be so much more open to seeing side characters pop in more than the main cast. Like the captain, I was like, okay, this is an interesting person to bring back. Or if it was like, we ran into like, Stuart or Claudia, or seeing Carl, if they're ever going to go back to McLaren's, because at the end of the day, the apartment is right there. If Carl was maybe going to show back up, that's fine. But
wasn't he in the episode at the bar?
He was there at the bar, but I would be so much more open to seeing him come back every few episodes or so than I would, Robin back. And just to keep in mind the timeline, the show's taking place in 2022. So this is 2 years before the mom dies and 2 years after her and Ted got married. I believe that's the timeline.
Look at the timeline now. But yeah, it's definitely after the second kid.
Yeah, because
because it's after Robin and Barney get divorced, and they got divorced 2 years after their marriage.
Well, yeah, and then one of the kids was pregnant at the wedding. Let's not forget that. Tracy.
Yeah. Gotcha. Was she pregnant? Or I thought they just winged it because they had the 2 kids already. They postponed the first wedding because she was pregnant. They had the second one, and then I think they had the wedding after that. Like, it's just
I thought they rushed it because she wanted to fit in her wedding dress.
No, they postponed the first one.
Okay, interesting.
She told him, "I won't be able to fit in my wedding dress anymore," and he asked why, and she says, "Because I'm pregnant." And so they kind of postponed it, and they.
Go ahead. I'm just thinking.
No, I'm pulling up the timeline now, but
because there is a flash forward where Ted's holding a kid in 2015, and I saw that recently and thought that was a plot hole. But yeah, I guess they have the older kid, and then they have the wedding.
Timeline is this: May 27th, 2013, Ted and Tracy go on their first dates, which is, a day after Robin and Barney get married. February 2014, Marshall and Lily have their second child, Daisy, and they're in Italy. 2015 is when they're supposed to get married, but Tracy learns she's pregnant, and they have their first child, Penny. 2016, Barney and Robin decide to get a divorce while they're in Buenos Aires. 2016, Lily gave birth to her third child. 2017, Ted and Tracy have their second kid named Luke. So it's 2024. She dies of illness. So they don't really say when they get married here, but yeah, it's between the mother dying and actually 2 years after Barney's child is born.
Interesting.
Oh,
Ellie is already born at this point. Yeah. So I think they're in a very unique place in the timeline where, if we were to see we're at a point where we can't run into the gang hanging out and getting drunk. Like, they have kids at this point in other lives. It gets to a point where that's just sad.
Oh, they're married in 2020, by the way.
Okay, so they do get married in 2020.
Yes.
All right, yeah.
A couple years after their second child.
Yeah, so I feel like, I would be the most open, of the main characters, even though she only showed up at the end, I would be the most open to Tracy showing up. Just because I think that would, she's the character that we want to see fleshed out the most. We really only got her for one season, and unfortunately we know her fate, but I think it'd be really interesting to put her in there, because the other thing about this show is this show's been in development hell since How I Met Your Mother ended. They were originally going to do a How I Met Your Dad, I think at one point it was called, on CBS, and it was going to be about a friend of Tracy's, and Tracy was going to pop up here and there. Now, in the past 8 to 9 years, I don't know how much of that original show is still in this show, but that's something that they could take from, is maybe have Tracy pop up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's gonna be interesting to see what they do more with this show, especially as we solidified more of the timeline here. Because will they stay in 2022 next season, or are they going to jump a year? Are they going to make it encompass a whole year like they normally did with this show beforehand? And they kind of have it follow a specific timeline as well.
Yeah, it's like the characters' lives don't necessarily depend on a timeline, but if they're going to want to keep using these cameos, they're going to have to keep the timeline in mind.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they can't have the mother showing up in 2025.
Yeah.
Sadly. Unless they want to go with the alternate ending and just kind of allude throughout the whole show that she's probably dying, but but get rid of when she dies. Please do that.
They could. And then I'm trying to just look at other stuff, my notes. So, like, what do we like? Okay, like we've kind of given our opinions on Sophie. I guess we can't talk about Sophie and not mention, Jesse. I think it's been very clear since the beginning that Jesse is like the main guy love interest for her. So, I feel like the big question is he the Robin or is he the father? I just want to know what you guys think he is.
That's a good question. I was gonna say, obviously it's not like this is hugely, but I got super Ted vibes from him. Like literally, like I was like watching the show and I'm like, he kind of sounds like Ted. Like,
see, I said he was a discount Zac Efron.
Yeah, that too. And so if he's inhabiting that Ted role, which is interesting that you kind of compared Sophie to Robin, like, and it's almost like a little like switcheroo there, then that means Jesse's the Robin in this situation. If they kind of end up with that same path, but yeah, I think that's where they're going.
Yeah. What about you, Mick?
Yeah, I hope they don't go that route. I hope they don't make them fit into the specific characters from the previous show.
Yeah.
Or different archetypes. But I could see them kind of playing with that idea throughout the whole season that they are Ted and Robin off and on, off again, on again, because they have already ended it in a way that's similar to how season 1 ended, with Robin leaving for a while and coming back with a boyfriend. Yeah, just like how he went off or he's now leaving with his ex-girlfriend who broke up with him as he was proposing. But I hope that they just don't stick with those archetypes that they established from the first show.
Yeah. And for the most part, I think the show is very good about us. Like, I can't point to one character and be like, that is a copy of Robin, that is a copy of Ted. People have mixed aspects of kind of everyone in there. Because, like, I honestly felt that Sophie, like I said before, that Sophie was more Ted until the last few episodes. I was like, oh, she does have like a Robin aspect to her. And so the characters are much more dynamic. And I think it's just, you're inherently going to see similarities.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant by, like, not that I wanted the show to follow the same framework. That's just how I was kind of looking at this show, just because of the connection to How I Met Your Mother. So I was just trying to draw like comparisons and things like that. Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. I don't know if I said that properly the first time.
I'm like stuck about what Jesse's going to be, because it's like, I feel like if he was the father, we would, the show would have ended. We'd been like, yes, that is the father. But I would hate if they did the same thing of it's an on again, off again, and she was, that maybe the timing never worked out, but they always kind of were into each other. Like even if this show doesn't necessarily end with the dad dying and then future Sophie running over to future Jesse to finally get him, even if it's just kind of the same implication of that they've always wanted each other but went for someone else at some other point in their lives, that's going to feel weird to me. But I'm also noticing with the narration that there really has not been reference to other characters in those ways. Like, we're not hearing her say, Aunt Valentina and Uncle Charlie, the way we used to hear future Ted say that about Marshall and Lily.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder too, like, when How I Met Your Mother aired, that was a different time in terms of like where television was at, and so like I don't know if it's a stretch to say, like, I don't know if this show will go 9 seasons like the original did.
I don't think it'll go a full 9.
Yeah, right. So like they're probably gonna have less to work with, and so like I said earlier, they have to be more dynamic with how they chart this show, and so they don't want to like kind of lay out where like a certain character is going to go, or where, like with Charlie and Valentina, like, oh, they're going to end up together. Like they kind of got to keep it a little dynamic so that if, oh, hey, we only have one more season. Oh, season 3 is the last season. Oh, okay. Then they can kind of like work from there. And then maybe we'll see more definitive kind of connections from the flashback perspective. Like when we kind of have that definitive ending.
Yeah, with this type of show, you definitely need to know which season is going to be your last, or else you really get no closure on anything.
Mm-hmm. Because they're going with the frame narrative again, and with How I Met Your Mother, they knew kind of the ending for a lot of the characters already from the jump, and so they're doing the same frame narrative, but I don't know if they know where everybody's going to end up at, and we don't know how long the show's going to go.
Yeah.
So that could add some interesting like developments and how they like actually end the show.
Yeah. I'm okay if the show knows where they want the characters to end, if they already know who the father is and we don't. I feel like the show knows it can't necessarily copy what the first one did. And again, I don't just mean the death of the mother or the father, just so much in there's a will they, won't they couple that was always going to be with each other. But at the same time, I feel like they also can't make it super obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we need to just see some level of a different dynamic where maybe Jesse and Sophie get together at some point and just realize that they're not meant for each other, but there's never the on and off again aspect that there is with Robin and Ted. Maybe it's a very respectful, it's not going to work out, but you're still always going to be a very special person to me type of situation.
Yeah, that's a possibility. And I think, again, like with the vagueness of it, it could leave open the possibilities of the father being Sid.
So that's the thing, yeah. There was a moment in the episode where they're at the hotel where I thought Sid and Sophie were going to kiss because she implied that Sid could hypothetically be the father.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen a moment where that could happen yet. Granted, she also implied Charlie could be the father, but I feel like that's a different situation.
Mm-hmm. And this is why I hope they have at least 3 or 4 seasons, because I think 3 seasons is a sweet spot right now with television. Just 3 seasons. You can have the first season be the setup, let it be good or let it bring people in, but the second season really be where you establish where everything happens. The third season ties everything up. And I hope they have it all planned out for however many seasons they hope they have. I hope they're not just playing it by ear every season, and hopefully one day leading up to the final point where they get to the end and they pick at random. Because for the first season, it was supposed to be Victoria. The mother was supposed to be Victoria, and then they got extended longer, so they didn't know if they were going to make it past the first season or 2, so they just picked Victoria as the mother, and then they adapted the story after that to change after that because they still had the ending finalized with the kids' recordings.
Yeah. But I also don't know if I would like the show to just have Sophie date every single guy in the group. And I don't say that in like a slut-shamey way. I just mean like from a writing perspective. I feel like that's very weak to like have her at some point get with every one of these of the main men of the show. Do you guys know what I mean?
Yeah,
I do. And I think that would also be bad for the audience as well, because it's more of like dangling carrots in front of us instead of actually giving us substantive content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do like the idea of them maybe teasing the possibility of Sid more than Charlie. Like at this point, I'm just willing to go like, it's definitely not Charlie. But maybe that's like part of the twist is that they're going to discount the idea of it being him so much. That way when it's him, everyone's thrown off.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to think again. I keep going back to like how I Met Your Mother did, but like I don't think the dad is gonna die or anything like that. And I mean, it could be a more like modern 21st century, like, oh, they're not together anymore kind of thing. And that's why Sophie's always alone. You know what I mean? Like they had, and it's only the son, right? It's not multiple kids. So
We've only heard, one.
it could be it could be a
voice.
one night stand. It could be a one night stand. And that's like,
it's something the son is in college or something. So yeah.
Yeah. They implied that the son was in his like early 20s type of thing.
Right.
And then something I noticed is that, they panned over on the photo that she took of Jesse, and she has that framed in her room or in her living room. So part of me goes, well, maybe the things with Jesse couldn't have ended that badly. But part of me is like, maybe she absolutely hates his guts, but that's still the first photo she's ever sold or put in a gallery. And so if she has to look at his face every day to remember that, she will.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I feel like the mystery is part of the fun of it, but like just other aspects of the season or the show, or like what are other thoughts you guys have outside of just the mystery of the father?
I think, well, I watched these shows because I like the mystery of it all and guessing and them giving us some clues. And I feel like that's its weakest point so far, which is why I kind of do want to rewatch the season again, is to see if they actually do start sprinkling clues here and there for all types of different things that red herrings and possible storylines in the future, and also giving us possible hints of this is the father. They've told us right from the beginning this is the father that we just didn't realize it yet, like they kind of did in the first episode.
Yeah,
with that line of "This is where I met your father." Yeah, I feel like they just need to go and watch the first show and see how they actually did it, because the first show is genius with all that they did for that, and with all the different tie-ins that they did for future episodes. Where then you feel like each episode's kind of like a one-off, but also still slowly progressing the group. But more so, we are building up a big timeline here for this group that involves fun, antics, growth, tears, pain, but in the end, it's this group of people hanging out and doing everything together.
Yeah.
Where like the father aspect is kind of an afterthought, while it's still kind of being the main focus of the show.
I get what you mean. Where like the moment to moment is not about the father, but the bigger story is. Something I'll ask you, Mick, since you were the only one, I guess, out of the three of us that watched part of the show as it was airing. The hints that the show dropped, did you know they were hints at the time? Or did they seem like things that could be one-off? Because, like, I think one of the biggest hints of foreshadowing that the original show ever did was the episode where, like, Ted's sitting alone at the bar and he's getting a message from Barney in his head being like, you're all alone. And he goes, if I could go back to that April night, I would see your cousin when he was a baby. I would go watch Barney and Robin fight. But the first thing I'd do is I'd run to your mom's apartment and he has this whole speech about how I'm going to meet you in 45 days, but I want those extra 45 days. In hindsight, that's very obvious that she dies. But in the moment, did you guys think that? You guys being like fans of the show that were watching as it aired.
I think some people might have pieced together, because I think there's another part too where there's a tombstone somewhere in the show. I think it's in the same graveyard as Marshall's dad, where it has the same initials, or says the same initials, or here lies the mother. So
interesting.
It's like, it could be little things in the background like that where you're not picking up on, or you're not really paying attention to, because the main focus is on Marshall and his brother is talking during the time. And no, at the time, I definitely didn't pick it up on it, because at that point it felt like, oh, he just wants to meet the mother sooner.
Yeah.
He just wants to get it. He just wants to get it over with and meet the mother and have the rest of his life with her. Not that he wants those extra 45 days to have a little bit more time with her. And same with the Tracy, the stripper part. We thought it was just a funny laugh. I thought it was a funny laugh when I first watched the show, because, oh, ha, 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 he's making a joke that their mother is actually this random stripper that he met.
Yeah.
But no, it actually is the mother's name.
Yeah. And I mean, like, and it's one of those things where if the mother didn't end up being named Tracy, you would be like, oh, that joke still works because a stripper's probably giving a fake name.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So hints would be fun, but yeah, I just don't know how much people knew hints were hints.
I feel like just knowing that there's hints somewhere in the show would help a lot. Adding all those like fun jokes or fun background things that are hints, but we don't know it at the time, to make it seem full circle when the show finally ends and we get the revelation. That's what I mean. That's what I mean earlier. But my comment of they need to have a plan and have it slowly grow out and be this big, almost flat circle of like all these hints we told you beforehand, or all these little jokes we had beforehand are actually hints.
Yeah.
I think that's what also helps with like rewatching the show and keeping the show people more engaged with the show is as they learn more, they go back and realize, oh my God, they actually told us all this beforehand. We just didn't realize it yet.
How do you guys feel about, Ian coming back now and could be a point of a conflict in season 2 and stuff? Because I honestly really liked this character in the first episode.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead, Mick.
I think he's too perfect. So,
Dude, I was gonna say the same thing.
yeah,
Like this guy's too good looking. He has a great job. Like he meshes well with Sophie so well. I was like,
he
what's
ticks
going
off
on here?
every single box for
What's
Sophie.
going on
Well, so something I want to, and part of this I just had this revelation, so stick with me here. And again, one of the things I'm happy about is that no one character is a direct comparison to another, but, we can make some here and there. If Ian, he might be the more Victoria character, right? And I feel like when we first met Victoria, she was very perfect.
Yeah.
And, Victoria comes back several times, but I feel like the one time you saw that Victoria wasn't perfect, and in fact, maybe wasn't really a good person at all, was when she started redating Ted and kept reminding him, I left a man at the altar for you. I left a man at the altar for you. And then when she makes the ultimatum of it's me or Robin. And, I think a lot of it, the idea of the unreliable narrator is always fun in this show and in the original show, where maybe he's so perfect in that first episode because in her mind, that date was perfect. And come season 2, we'll only see flaws because that's when the flaws started to kind of reveal themselves and she was becoming very annoyed with it.
Yeah, I think that was also a great point. The first show is these people seem perfect for each other right when they get meet each other, but yeah, as they start dating, it's the glass breaking effect. It's them learning more of each other and realizing they're not as good as I thought they were. So maybe we'll get that in season 2 for this guy again. I'm sorry, I'm awful with names. Ian, you said?
Ian.
Yeah, Ian.
Ian, yeah. With Ian coming back. But yeah, I feel like he's either the Victoria character or maybe he's a Stella.
Ooh.
Where he might be.
Go.
Yeah, where it's like it's all perfect right now, but there might be some thing that pushes Sophie to change in a way, or at least change her dating habits after him. Yeah.
Because, at the end of the day, his job is going to require regular travel. I think isn't, sure, the boat situation worked out and he's back in New York, but the next job he gets as a marine biologist may also be going to some remote part of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And that could maybe be the biggest falling factors, that he likes that life. He doesn't want to do like a lab job or a teaching job where he's going to be in one place forever. And that could maybe be the point of contention for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Or again, it might just go back to being the Victoria character, because that was the big issue with Ted and Victoria and why they broke up, was Victoria left.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She had to leave to Germany. So yeah, maybe Ian having to go on more excursions changes Sophie in a way.
Although I don't want to see two different plot lines regarding long distance relationships.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I do gotta say I did like how in this show there's literally a couple of scenes where like I don't even know for how long, but like longer than like a brief pause where like the like the scenes where like people texting each other back and forth. I did think like they kind of, now granted, like not a lot, like it's hard for shows to do this perfectly, but like integrate like how modern technology works within our everyday lives. And like translated like it was Sophie and I think Ian texting like in the first episode, like literally back and forth, and I was like, oh, interesting that they actually like showed that of just like them typing on their phones. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think right now Hollywood is in a phase trying to figure out the best way to show texting on screen. Like, be from, I guess, the 60s to the mid 2000s. Anytime people were on a phone call, it was very easy. You split screen it, boom, you understand what's going on there. And I think with texting, we're still trying to figure out the best way to do it. Is do you have the text messages pop up? Do you read them out loud for whatever reason? And I think
I thought this show did it well. Like they showed, sometimes they showed like the notifications just pop up on the side of the screen, like not even
that's
like,
what
on
I
a
mean.
device.
Mhm.
I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like that's a good way to, yeah, because I did like some of the scenes where it was like showing them on their phones, but it was a good way to like almost like a UI, like integrate it into the story to show that like
Yeah.
this person got a text message.
Yeah.
This part of the story is developing further, and like a cool, like quick, fast way. I really like that.
Yeah. One of the jokes I made about them texting was, I wonder if there's a picture of me between Ian and Sophie's texts when they were doing the Jason Momoa lookalike thing.
That was funny. I was like, I don't know if I've ever like had that kind of like
Inside joke.
inside joke. Like, yeah, it was funny, but I was like,
Yeah.
Jason Momoa. Now I'm gonna look for Jason Momoa.
Jason Momoa's in your life to censor someone. Yeah, there were a few jokes, like even in the weaker episodes, there were a few jokes that like I'd be lying if I say they didn't got me. The keg just falling down the stairs got me.
Yeah.
And then and Brett, this is like another one of those inside jokes where the episode where we meet Sophie's mother, and she's dating that really young guy, and Sophie says like, "Oh my God, he's gonna be my teenage stepdad." And Valentina goes, "Teenage Stepdad would be a Nickelodeon show." And I'm like, fuck, like that one is right.
Yeah.
And then she just goes, "I'll add it to the Google Doc," implying that this is something, a joke that they've already had. And that is something I hope becomes a reoccurring bit.
And like, I don't know, for me, it was a little meta, and not like Hilary Duff was on Nickelodeon, she was on Disney, but like just like she was a child actress, and that like her character in the show like still like and like with I guess I'll bring it up now because I don't know when else I'd bring it up, but the cameo that surprised me was Margot Harshman as I guess Ellen and Jesse's dates.
Oh yeah, that was a weird plot line.
Because she was from Even Stevens, one of my favorite like childhood shows growing up, and like
Oh, was she?
that is, yeah, she was Tawny. It was Lewis, Twitty, and then Tawny. She was the girl
Okay.
in Even Stevens.
Gotcha.
And like she looked a little bit different. I was like, it took a second for me to have it click. But it is that thing that like, maybe it's just me and my friends, but like you talk about like those childhood shows, and all those shows are now available on streaming, so they're still like a part of your life in a small tangential way. And so that was like a little like just a little moment. I was like, oh yeah, like of course you would still like, adults nowadays probably, and maybe not most, I don't know, but like would still like just think or like come up with fake shows and stuff like that about like your childhood. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. But no, those type of jokes, like, I think was what really cemented, like, for context of how much, like, this show, how much interest I had in it, I watched the majority of these episodes on my Switch during my lunch break. Like, it was not it's time to sit down.
The Hulu app is on Switch, that's right.
That's the only app it's got.
Yeah.
And then I ended up watching 2 episodes on my phone on a train a couple weeks ago, and it was only the last 2 episodes I watched on an actual like television dedicated to be like, I want to finish the season. So the characters definitely grew on me as the season went on, but it was those type of jokes that kind of cemented it for me, that like, okay, we're this is the type of humor and stuff I look for. And I think another important thing I had to keep reminding myself is I can't compare one season of a show that isn't even complete yet to the love and the standard that I have of a show that I know the full story of, that I was with for 9 seasons.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an interesting, and we've talked about it so much already, but like that show is already done. We know that story from front to back, as like mixed in all the little connections and Easter eggs that they threw in there. This show might not be constructed that same way. It's a different era of TV. Like it's just like it's gonna be hard to look at until it's done, and then but yeah, it's like hindsight's 20/20 kind of thing. So who knows? I do have a question to ask you guys. Did this show, and we kind of answered this already, but I want to ask it directly. Did this show give you that same like feeling? Now, granted, like you said, Jordan, it's only season 1. Did this show give you that same feeling that How I Met Your Mother gave you at any point?
Mick, you could go first.
I'll repeat the question one more time.
Did this show give you that like I don't? It's kind of hard to describe. Did this show give you that feeling of the same kind of feeling you got when you watched How I Met Your Mother at any point, like even How I Met Your Mother season 1, or just any point of the original show compared to this one?
I think the biggest moment for that was them or Charlie trying to make them watch soccer.
Yeah, dude.
Because it felt like them trying to watch football, the Super Bowl back in season 4 or 5, but then like all trying to watch football together, watch sports together here and there. But also by the end of it, it felt a little bit more coherent and cohesive about the gang's dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I felt like, okay, they are going to bring me back in for season 2, when they all were starting to hit their strides and have their own big moments and starting to actually care for everybody besides just Hillary Duff Sophie.
Yeah. I think you were away before recording, Mick, but I was telling Jordan, I was like, I love that soccer scene because I'm a big sports guy, and it's so funny when you talk about sports with people who aren't into sports, or you talk about your specific team with someone who's not a fan of your team, and it's like that disconnect is just so real. Like seeing Charlie try to get everybody into watching the soccer match, I was like, oh man, dude, if I was there with you, I would be watching that soccer match with you like 100%. But like, sometimes people are just not vibing with it, but you're still friends despite the differences. So that was a big moment for me too, actually.
Yeah. I also liked, speaking of that moment, how they were able to turn it around and not just make it I wanted to do something and nobody wants to do what I do, but that like it meant something to him because of his background and the fact that, he went all these episodes without saying it, but he's basically in a brand new world. Moving to a new country is not easy. And like you could make fun of him for coming from a rich family his whole life. That's still a very scary situation to be in. And I can see why he wants just something that feels familiar or comforting.
Yeah, they literally said he got Meghan Markle, and I was like, yeah, like he's in a brand new world, and he doesn't have like that safety net. Now, granted, I guess in that one episode they were like he went on.
Yeah, he's done it before, so I guess his family takes him back anytime.
Yeah. So, but again, this one feels a little more permanent. I mean, like he has like an apartment and stuff, and obviously Valentina is a real relationship, although they're kind of broken up right now. But I really want to see what they do with his character next season. Yeah. Like further up the fish out of water, further up, like maybe like have like his family show up to some extent to like bring him back. Like, oh, you're actually like really into this girl. Like it's not like a fling thing that like before. Like, yeah, I'd be fascinated to see where they go with his character.
Well, even with this first season, that felt like the very first moment of actual character growth for anybody in that group. Besides any one of them having just repeating the same things that they have repeated over and over again about why they're there. Like that one was actually, oh no, he wants to bring these people together by something that he loves. And it's not just, oh, I'm rich and I'm here because of Valentina, but also I am human and I do miss things too.
Yeah. I feel like he has like a reverse dynamic of Ellen, where I feel like Ellen started out with this very interesting backstory that, I mentioned before of she wants to find out who she is outside of this one relationship she's had since high school. She went through an actual divorce. It was more than just a breakup, but she wants to get herself out there. And then as the season went on, we don't really get much more other than she got a job at a grocery store. Whereas Charlie was the reverse. He comes in, we first see him, he's like naked. And then as the season goes on, you're like, this character is trying his best to do what is right. He's trying not to come off as snobby or a dick, but he also does miss his home. And Bret, getting back to the question you asked, the show came close, I'll say that, into reminding me of How I Met Your Mother. Like I said in the beginning, the biggest things I love from How I Met Your Mother are the monologues and the lines that it has about love. The like the one that comes to mind that I'll watch sometimes when I'm feeling down is the lifelong treasure of destiny, and it's like that made up German word that Klaus says, and how you just know it from the beginning. I've always liked Stella's thing to Ted about she's getting here as fast as she can. You just have to wait a little bit longer. I've always liked Ted's whole monologue at the end about it being a long, difficult road. Like those ones have always stuck out to me. This show never hit those highs. There were two moments where it got kind of close. One was a lot less, it wasn't as big a moment in the show, but to me it was. It was when Drew, I'm just trying to find the note. It's when Drew goes to Sophie's party and she's like, I tried to make this more professional and adult-like, and I just feel like I'm still a kid sometimes. And he goes, sometimes I wish that I loosened up a bit more. And I like that dynamic of both of them not necessarily being unhappy in life, but wishing that they could have a different level of maturity, or at least be able to transition, like turn their maturity on and off as needed. And that they're kind of, they both have regrets in a way, where Sophie maybe regrets that she doesn't have the more established life that other people her age might, which is something we all go through at points. But then Drew being like, I kind of wish I, took time to actually relax and party rather than just hurry up my life, and now I'm a vice principal. The other one, the one that really got to me from this season, was in the episode when I thought Sid and Sophie were going to kiss or something, was when they were sitting on the floor and Sophie talks about how she's never been in a relationship before, and how like she's gone on a bunch of dates, but things fizzle out before they get serious. Sophie's 30, so it's a little different than what I'm about to say, but as somebody who's 26 and has been in that, I'm in that exact situation. Never been in an actual real relationship. I date around, go on lots of dates, things don't happen. And so that one spoke to me on a very, very personal level. But I also think that that's a idea that we maybe need to normalize a little bit in society, that it's okay if you haven't had serious relationships in your mid-20s. Some people don't really date in high school, college. Some people do different things during that. And so, that's totally acceptable. And so that one really spoke to me.
Yeah, I'll jump in there a little bit too. Like, I've had relationships, but I don't think I've had a relationship last over a year. So it's never, because, so, I mean, I that's kind of long, but like in the grand scheme of things, that's like not super long. And so
I get what you mean. Yeah.
I'm in it's kind of similar to what you are. And that's just kind of how it is for some people. And, that was another moment I was like, oh yeah, I was like, sometimes like you just don't like, and for various reasons, you just don't commit to a relationship, or they break it with you or whatever. And I thought it was a really nice touch in terms of like modern like dating. I thought that was great. Also, I really liked that scene when the text messages disappeared and he was checking them on his laptop. I was like, oh my God. I was like, that's another like little modern like touch that like that made me chuckle.
There was the social media thing that they did on the show, like in some and like there were some aspects where I was like, this really works, and in other aspects I was like, this really doesn't. But looking back at all of it now, I think that I'm not gonna say they nailed social media, but they did it in a way that didn't feel overly cringy at points. Because the most cringiest it felt was that girl's bat mitzvah, but that's how I would expect a 13-year-old influencer to act, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I assume. This is all an assumption. But that one being cringy, I was like, that one maybe, that fits.
Yeah.
I
also didn't see Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yeah, I also don't know if I'd be more like Sophie or Valentina in that situation. If I'd confess to the kids, be like, you guys took aspirin and maybe some mins, or if I'd fuck with them and be like, you guys, you are going out there on telling your parents you're on drugs.
Oh, you gotta fuck with them because they were unruly beforehand. You have them on the hook, man. You gotta keep them on the hook.
I would have to be the one to be like, don't worry, you guys are idiots. You took aspirin.
That's the other thing, is I don't want the placebo effect to get to the point where they act weird in front of their parents, and then one of the kids flips out under this placebo effect and confesses everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But any other final thoughts, guys? General thoughts on the season as a whole?
I think I've already discussed all my thoughts, and what I hope to see in the future is I think the show has potential. They just need to make it their own. They need to get out of the Hilary Duff shadow. Like, just make her be one of 6 instead of 1 and 5.
Yeah.
But it has potential. It could be a great show on Hulu. They just need to grow. I hope they learn from their lessons from season 1.
What about you, Brett?
Yeah, I echo everything Mick said, and I thought it was a good first step forward, because I did start to buy into all of the characters to certain degrees by the end, if this is like a typical like streamer show in terms of length, 3 or 4 seasons, I'm really excited, especially with season 2 getting 20 episodes. I'm really excited for season 2. Because I think it has the potential to really like they laid the groundwork somewhat with this show, with all the characters, and I really hope they can like cultivate that for season 2 and see like exponential quality of the show. Because I like this first season. I'm hoping I can love the second season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely like, I ended up getting attached to these characters, I'll have to say. Took longer than I would like to get there, but I got there, and I am very excited to see if season 2 answers a lot of the questions I have, fleshes out the side characters more, and really fixes both the errors that they made in season 1 and also things from just How I Met Your Mother's original run. And I would really like to see this become, but I also want the show to be able to stand on its own.
Yeah, that's going to be that unique balance with this huge legacy of this immensely like popular show, and how they have to lean into it, but they can't like tie themselves to like the complete like DNA of How I Met Your Mother. So it's an interesting balance that they have to play with, and I think regardless, I'm still fascinated to see how this turns out, just based off of how much I love How I Met Your Mother.
For sure. Well, that's all the time we got, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe to see more spoiler casts and media discussions. We will be doing weekly media clubs for Moon Knight, which comes out next week. Special thank you again to Mick. Mick, where can people find you?
You can find me everywhere at TheNanoBiologist, or on TikTok and YouTube at Nanosecond Gaming.
And everyone's socials will be in the descriptions down below, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.